Welcome to Bible Essentials. My name is Sarah Ruff. We are in the middle of the study of Daniel. We are studying Daniel chapter 4 today. Remember, watch these in order. Don't skip around because it's going to make more sense if it's in order. All right, Daniel chapter 4. King Nebuchadnezzar, to those of every people, nation, and language who live in all the earth, may your prosperity increase. I am pleased to tell you about the miracles and wonders the Most High God has done for me. How great are his miracles and how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. How does this heathen King Nebuchadnezzar know this? Well, because remember his dream of the stone that hit the statue and filled the whole earth. It was a kingdom that will last for all eternity. God showed this to King Nebuchadnezzar. Verse 4. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and flourishing in my palace. I had a dream, and it frightened me while in my bed. So Nebuchadnezzar has another dream. Thank goodness Daniel can interpret dreams, that God gave him that gift. I had a dream, and it frightened me while in my bed. The images and visions in my mind alarmed me. So I issued a decree to bring all the wise men of Babylon to me in order that they might make the dream's interpretation known to me. When the diviner, priests, mediums, Chaldeans, and astrologers came in, I told them the dream, but they could not make its interpretation known to me. Finally, Daniel named Belteshazzar after the name of my God. There you have it. Daniel was named after King Nebuchadnezzar's God, Bel. So finally, Daniel named Belteshazzar after the name of my God, and the spirit of the holy gods is in him, came before me. I told him the dream. Belteshazzar, head of the diviners, because I know that you have the spirit of the holy gods and that no mystery puzzles you, explain to me the visions of the dream that I saw and its interpretation. In the visions of my mind, as I was laying in my bed, I saw this. So finally, King Nebuchadnezzar has told his other diviners and mediums, and no one could do it. He finally gets Daniel before him, and he says, okay, Daniel, let me tell you the dream. And so here is the beginning of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. It says, there was a tree in the middle of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew large and strong. Its top reached the sky, and it was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit was abundant, and on it was food for all. Wild animals found shelter under it, and the birds of the air lived in its branches, and every creature was fed from it. So he sees this big tree that reaches into the sky. It was visible to the ends of the earth. The leaves are beautiful. The fruit was abundant. It had food for all. The animals sheltered under it. The birds lived in it. Every creature was fed from this huge big tree. As I was lying in my bed, I also saw the vision of my mind of an observer, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He called out loudly, cut down the tree and chop off its branches. Strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches, but leave the stump with its roots in the ground and with a band of iron and bronze around it. In the tender grass of the field, let him... There's our first clue that maybe this tree we're talking about might not be talking about a real tree, but maybe a him. Let him be drenched with the dew from the sky and share the plants of the earth with the animals. Let his mind be changed. There it is. His mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal. Of this, for 7 periods of time. How long? For 7 periods of time. This word is by decree of the observers. The matter is a command from the holy ones. This is so. This vision that King Nebuchadnezzar has seen, this big tree reaching into the sky where it had food for all, the birds and all the animals. Then he sees that there was a command to chop this tree down, but to save its roots, where all the animals and everything would flee from it. This whole vision that he sees was for this purpose. Listen, this is so those who are living will know that the Most High is ruler over the kingdom of men. That's the purpose of this vision, so that those living will know that the Most High is the ruler over the kingdom of men. He gives it to anyone he wants and sets over it the lowliest of men. Okay, let's keep reading. What's the interpretation of this? Verse 18, this is the dream that I, Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now, Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because none of the wise men in my kingdom can make the interpretation known to me, but you can. Why? Because you have the spirit of the holy gods. Then Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, was stunned for a moment, and his thoughts alarmed him. The king said, Belteshazzar, don't let the dream or its interpretation alarm you. Belteshazzar answered, My lord, may the dream apply to those who hate you, and its interpretation to your enemies. Here we go. You ready? You ready for it? It says this, the tree you saw, which grew large and strong, whose top reached the sky, and whose was visible to all the earth, whose leaves were beautiful, and its fruit was abundant, and on it was food for all. Under it the wild animals lived, and in the branches the birds of the air lived. That tree is you, Nebuchadnezzar, the king. For you have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown and even reaches the sky, and your dominion or your rule extends to the ends of the earth. So this tree that had food for all, that had reached to the sky, Daniel is saying, it's you. You're seeing a vision of yourself, King Nebuchadnezzar, verse 23. The king saw an observer, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump with its roots in the ground and with a band of iron and bronze around it in the tender grass of the field. Let him. So cut down the tree means cut down King Nebuchadnezzar, cut him off and destroy him. But leave a stump with its roots in the ground and the band of iron and bronze around it in the tender grass of the field. Let him, Nebuchadnezzar, be drenched with the dew from the sky and share food with the wild animals for 7 periods of time, or 7 years. This is the interpretation, Your Majesty, and this is the sentence of the Most High that has been passed against you, my lord the king. You, Nebuchadnezzar, will be driven away from people to live with the wild animals. You will feed on grass like cattle and be drenched with the dew from the sky for 7 periods of time, or 7 years, until you, King Nebuchadnezzar, acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over the kingdoms of men, and he gives it to anyone he wants. That is key here. It's so. This is so. So here's the deal. King Nebuchadnezzar, who's the most powerful man in the world, he's in the statue, the head of gold. He has all power, all authority. God has given it to him. But God is going to remove him from kingship. Not just remove him from kingship, but move him actually to where he becomes like an animal. He's actually going to remove him to a field, a pasture, to where he will eat cattle, eat grass like an animal. He is going to so humiliate him, so devalue him, so take him from king, the head of gold, to literally an animal. And the whole purpose of this is so that he will know that it is God who sets up kingdoms and takes them down. So look at this, verse 26. As for the command to leave the tree's stump with its roots, your kingdom, King Nebuchadnezzar, your kingdom will be restored to you as soon as you acknowledge that heaven rules. Therefore, may My advice seemed good to you, the king. Separate yourselves from your sin by doing what is right, and from your injustices by showing mercy to the needy. Perhaps there will be an extension of your prosperity. Let me continue reading verse 28. All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months or a year, it took a year for this to occur to him. But listen, at the end of 12 months, as he was walking, King Nebuchadnezzar was walking on the roof of his royal palace in Babylon. The king exclaimed, "Is it not Babylon the great that I have built by my vast power to be a royal residence and to display my majestic glory?" While the words were still in the king's mouth, a voice came from heaven, "King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is declared that the kingdom has departed from you. You will be driven away from people to live with the wild animals, and you will feed on grass like cattle for 7 periods of time, until you acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over the kingdom of men, and he gives it to anyone he wants." That is huge. It is God that reigns over these kings and kingdoms and gives them to anyone he wants. At that moment, the sentence against Nebuchadnezzar was executed. He was driven away from people. He ate grass like cattle, and his body was drenched with dew from the sky until his hair grew like eagle's feathers and his nails like bird's claws. But at the end of those days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven, and my sanity returned to me. Then I praised the Most High and honored and glorified him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing. Listen, King Nebuchadnezzar knows this more than anyone. He says, all the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing. And he, God, does what he wants with the army of heaven and the inhabitants of the earth. There is no one who can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" You can't hold back his hand, and no one can even say, "What have you done?" Verse 36, at that time my sanity returned to me, and my majesty and splendor returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and my nobles sought me out. I was reestablished over my kingdom, and listen, and even more greatness came to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and glorify the King of heaven, because all his works are true and his ways are just, and he is able to humble those who walk in pride. Wow. I love this. Let's go back. Remember let's go back. Let me show you this slide. Remember this statue, this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, the statue of him being Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, the head of gold, and these inferior kingdoms after him. And then in chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar is like, oh no, I don't want an inferior kingdom coming after me. I could possibly keep this from happening if I unite all my kingdom and if we worship one God, we worship this statue. And then God in chapter 4 says, King Nebuchadnezzar, there is nothing you can do. I am the one who raises up kingdoms. I raised you up, King Nebuchadnezzar. Everything you have is because I've given it to you. And I'm going to take it from you. I'm going to give it to this inferior kingdom. And I'm going to show you this by taking the kingdom away from you. And not only does God take the kingdom away from King Nebuchadnezzar, but he degrades him to an animal, literally an animal eating grass in the pasture for 7 years. And then God gives him his sanity back, and King Nebuchadnezzar realizes, okay, it is God who sets me up and takes me down. And then God restores the kingdom back to King Nebuchadnezzar, which was stronger and more powerful than before. Only God can do that. Only God can do that. And the whole purpose to chapter 4, the whole purpose to that vision. And what happened to King Nebuchadnezzar was so that King Nebuchadnezzar would know that it is God who sets up kingdoms, and he gives these kingdoms to anyone he wants to. This is huge. Those kingdoms of that statue, it is God that's going to set up that inferior kingdom. It is going to be God that sets up that kingdom of bronze, that third kingdom that's going to rule the earth. It's going to be God who's going to set up this fourth kingdom that's going to smash and crush the earth. It is going to be God who sets up those 10 kings that are reigning and ruling when Christ returns. God will do all of those things. All right, next week, we're going to dive into chapter 5. Don't miss it. Join me for it. See you then.